Hello, everybody, and not sooner, later, better than late than never, really, is what I mean to say. There with the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix cool down room. We've got Bowser above me here, right there, and
Howdy, howdy.
I'm Umilius or David for the sake of this, because I know that Bowser's going to call me Umilius. Oh, not Umilius, David. Oh my god, this is terribly, mate. I'm just going to pass straight over to you. Get us through quali, and let's get on to this.
I'll get you through quali, my friend. I'll get you through quali. Right, starting from the back to the front, as per usual. Hello, everyone, by the way. Nice to see you again. We started off with Zhou, who did not qualify after a big crash in Q3 in the morning on Saturday. Followed by Sargent in 19th. Pretty disappointing for Williams again. The two Alpines, as standard, a disappointing start, but they kind of knew about that anyway, with Gasly again starting behind Ocon. That's 18th and 17th, respectively. You've then got Bottas, the other stake F1 car, in 16th. Moving on to Q2 runners, we've got Hulkenberg, who did not finish the run. Then you've got Ricardo in a disappointing 14th, with K-Mag a little bit better in 13th, and Albon starting in P12. The big news of the whole weekend, I think you'll agree, is Ollie Behrman coming in for Carlos Sainz after his was ruptured appendix surgery that was required. Ollie Behrman did an amazing job without doing anything with free practice 1 and 2. He only had the hour of FP3 and then qualifying and still managed to get 11th, so absolutely amazing job there. So that was your 11th place runner. Almost like hundredths of milliseconds away from knocking out 10th place man, Lance Stroll. And then we moved on.
It was Lewis Hamilton.
At the time, it was Lewis Hamilton, but yes, Lewis Hamilton did just scrape through Q2. But yes, moving on to the Q3 runners, it is Lance Stroll in 10th. Yuki Tsunoda managed to get up into 9th position. Hamilton only a lonely 8th, and Russell again 7th for the two Mercedes. Again, very disappointing for them as well. Bear in mind they were hoping that they'd solved half of their issues. Then you got Norris and Piastri. Norris in 6th, Piastri doing really well in 5th, beating Norris with a more experienced teammate. Alonso just always doing incredible things in that Aston Martin up in 4th position. Then you got Perez in 3rd, Leclerc getting all the way through to 2nd, but obviously 1st place is our usual man who's kind of solidified that position, Max Verstappen. P1 with a lap of 1 minute 27.472.
Yeah, absolutely incredible lap as well. If you watch the onboard, it's absolutely mental how hard he was pushing still. I don't think we really appreciated it at the time because, well, when you watch it, you're just like, oh, Max and pole, but it's actually on akin to the 2021 lap that was never been kind of thing. It was a really good lap. So
It was.
play to Max there, as much as I am not a fan. Right, let's moving on to the race then. Let's start with Alpine and talk about the fact that if you're an Alpine fan right now, or a Gasly and Ocon fan, you have got to be absolutely hating life. Poor qualifying again. Gasly didn't even start the race. Again, you just got to feel bad for him at this point. The poor guy went from Red Bull, he went to what was Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, whatever you want to call it nowadays. Thought he was getting out of that and finally going to have a chance at something, and now he's actually at the back of the grid. I just don't understand what Alpine are doing at that team at the moment. But when it rains, it pours. Ocon being in 13th looks a lot better than actually it is. It wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the fact there was a train, I don't believe. I think that car is the worst car on the grid at the moment by a country mile.
I completely agree. It's difficult. Obviously, towards the middle of last season, there was a big shake-up with the management and development. We've also seen at the start of this year as well, after obviously they had their testing before even the first race, two of their major sort of management team of the engineering department, especially, and aerodynamics, I believe as well, have been sacked or left by mutual consent. However, they want to spin it for the media. But yeah, the car's apparently nearly 10 kilograms overweight compared to a lot of the rest of the field. That's going to be hurting them a lot. But with a really good car behind them, it wouldn't be that far behind where they were. So there are definitely other inherent issues with that car as well. There is some major updates that we have heard about on the grapevine coming in, but unfortunately for you Alpine fans, it's going to be a few more races of pain and torture before you get a chance to see some of them, because they're estimated not to come until race 5 or maybe even race 6. So that'll be heading for around about, let me just double check for you so I can give you a decent idea of when that's going to be. So upcoming races, you're looking at potentially round 5 being China, round which is the 19th to 21st of April, or round 6 being the 3rd to the 5th of May. So
and you've got to hope at the same time that the other teams don't bring upgrades that are equally as good and Alpine are still for pace.
that is the
Just
issue.
like
Yeah.
you shouldn't fire half of your team midway through the season before, isn't it? But yeah, I don't know. Watching Drive to Survive, I felt bad for Otmar at the time, and well, this is what happens when you change things mid-season and you bring in someone who I believe, if I remember correctly, didn't have any motorsports experience to run the team. So, yeah, well, shit show. Moving on.
Indeed.
Let's go for Kick Sauber next, I think.
Yeah.
Another weekend to forget for them. Joe running really well, and then they screw up another pit stop. What is going on with these pit stops with them at the moment? It's basic Formula One. Is just get the pit stop right. Why can't they do it?
I mean, especially as F1 has introduced the rule of there has to be a change of compound throughout the race. There's always going to be a pit stop throughout the Grand Prix, so it's got to be something. At the end of the day, you can build an amazing car, you can have the best driver in the world, but if you're screwing up every pit stop, then you're not going to win, or you're going to you have to be dominating by a Max Verstappen level to have the comfort of losing 5-6 seconds in the pit stops. I mean, Bottas had it last week, Joe had it this week. Yeah, they're just throwing away points, which at the end of the season is gonna cost them millions, frankly. And it's one of those things, like, yes, the engineers obviously set up the car and they'll build the car. And then they, for the race, you hand it over to a driver. Of course you do. But then the pit stop is the last little thing that they can help to influence that Grand Prix. That's the last thing that they can do to try and help. And yeah, there's obviously some issues. Whether it's the equipment they're using at the moment, whether other teams have more advanced equipment, I'm not 100% sure. But it's definitely something that they need to look at. Whether it's more practice, more training, because I've seen in practice sessions this year as well, them practicing pit stops, but. Yeah, they've got to stop feeling the pressure and making mistakes when it matters the most.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it potentially cost them points because Guan Yu Zhou was in that battle for the 10th place at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Completely took him out of it and ruined their weekend. Bottas had another weekend to forget. Do you know what? I feel Bottas is overdue some good luck. I'm calling it now. Bottas is going to have a good weekend in Australia. They've kind
You
of
reckon?
adopted him. If you look at the marketing and stuff, it's Oscar Piastri, Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas with the mullet. They've adopted him as like a third son almost. I feel like the Australian crowd is going to be a bit behind him. I think Bottas is going to have a bounce back at Australia. I've got a feeling for him. So
What are you thinking? Low points?
either low points or just outside the points. I'm not saying he's going to like win the race, but I'm saying he's going to be vastly higher up than what he has been, and hopefully Sauber don't screw him over.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
There we go. You heard it here first, folks.
I'll be sat here miserable as hell when my fantasy team bombs that I've put Bottas into because I've got it wrong. Right, shall we move on to Racing Bulls next?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Bit of a weekend to forget for them as well, really, to be honest with you. Yuki Tsunoda, cracking qualifying to get himself into the top 10. Didn't deliver. Don't really know what went wrong with his race. Just seemed to just keep dropping back and back and back. No major pit stop issue for him. Got screwed over a bit by K-Mag cutting a corner and being able to keep the place. I'm still very adamant this is a rule that needs to be changed. If someone cuts a corner and keeps a place ahead of someone, drive-through penalty. Stops it. We don't have this silly buggers going on that we've had in Saudi Arabia. I think it's quite clear-cut. They should have like a lap or two to give the place back. If they don't do it, drive-through penalty. Then they'll stop doing it. It's as simple as you can't be allowing someone to cut a corner, stay ahead of someone, take a penalty, and then because he managed to not get lapped, finish ahead, even with the penalty. 20 seconds worth of penalty, still finished in exactly the same place because Max Verstappen lapped everyone else. Ridiculous. Do not understand how Haas got away with this, but yeah. Anyway, talking about Yuki Tsunoda, not Haas yet. So with Yuki, bit of a weekend to forget. Ended up finishing behind the Alpine, not really good enough. And on the flip side of that as well, my boy Daniel Ricciardo we very much had a weekend to forget as well. I'm really hoping that he gets on top of these issues soon because he's my boy and I want him to do well. But yeah, not the best of times. Was doing relatively all right on the back of the trainer people. Got a bit screwed over by a 40-second pit stop, but still ending up only at the back of the train really after that, and spinning on his own under no pressure was a bit uncharacteristic in my opinion. So we'll see. Hopefully, whatever issues he's having with the car, they've managed to sort out for him for Australia. Because really hoping that he can have a good performance this weekend coming. So yeah, fingers crossed for Daniel. But yeah, all round bad weekend for both drivers. And yeah, not really sure how Yuki went from starting in the top 10 to finishing 14th. Not really sure what's going on with Daniel Ricciardo. Racing Bulls, sort it out.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult weekend for him. Yeah, I mean, Ricardo, you saw what he did last year in Mexico, coming back with a broken wrist, still just like putting it fourth on the grid, was it, or something ridiculous like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's got the talent still there, and he's obviously in big favour with Christian Horner at Red Bull as well. So I'm sure, he's got everything crossed that Daniel does well, and he can sort of sell himself enough to put himself up in that Red Bull seat. But I mean, if he has any more weekends realistically, like he's just had, they're going to have to really seriously rethink that, because it's that was a bit of a shocker on just Daniel's performance on his own. Really, to be honest, like I said, that very uncharacteristic spin after turn 1, turn 2 section. It was. Yeah, it was difficult to watch, under no pressure at all. So that was bad. I think realistically, I think Yuki Tsunoda's scenario for the weekend, I wasn't as disappointed as I think you kind of made out that you were. I think mainly, he just maybe outperformed the car in qualifying more than anything else, and it's more of a case of that car, is just inherently not that quick, and then going backwards in the race is just the other cars or the other drivers being able to utilize their better cars at the end of the day. I think that's potentially, in my opinion, sort of the way I watched it. He looked like it was a handful from start to finish on the race, especially in high fuel, which would have sort of contributed to that, and maybe answered the question of why he managed to get where he did in quali. That's also, if there's an inherent issue under sort of heavier fuel loads with that car, you'd kind of then question, well, Daniel needs to pick up his speed, because he can't be being outdone by Yuki every week. Because
I'm being probably a bit harsh on Yuki, mainly because I'm grumpy that he's in my fantasy team, didn't perform, and I also have Racing Bulls in my fantasy team, and Daniel Ricciardo in my fantasy team. So yeah, a terrible week.
It's one of those things. Like, everyone knows the coveted second Red Bull seat's up for grabs. Someone's just got to put in some stellar performances to try and grab hold of it in that Red Bull family, Otherwise, if either Perez is going to keep it, or they're going to look outside the Red Bull family and buy in a Lando Norris.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. We'd love to see it, honestly, we would. So yeah, that's... Yeah, it seems to be, as soon as the option's there, that real good opportunity of like really impressing to go up, they all seem to like just capitulate on their own, just kind of collapse and crumble. So I hopefully it was just a case of that car and that track just weren't feeling each other. So let's hope it was just that, and we move on to a more successful Australia for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us on to the next team then. So Williams.
Yeah.
Not a great weekend again. Williams of old would have probably been in the points here. It's a track that you would have favoured them at the straight line speed. Yeah, exactly. So they'd have been a bit disappointed that... I'm hoping that this change in car philosophy is going to pay off at some point for them, because at the moment it just seems to be working against them. Albon finishing 11th, Sargent in 15th. I think Albon... He did manage to overtake K-Mag on the track, didn't he? That's not from... Yeah, he did manage to overtake him on the track. K-Mag put him into a wall at one point. He was driving a damaged car and still got past him when no one else could. So, again, kudos to Alex Albon. But equally, what the hell are you doing, Logan Sargent? Because he was right behind Alex Albon when that happened and made no progress. So, in fact, I'm pretty sure he then lost a place to Ocon. So, um, yeah, Logan Sargent's he's got to be picking up his game at this point. Like he's had a year. He's supposedly done all this practice and got himself into better shape off track. James Vowles has had his back, and we're just, as far as I'm concerned, seeing absolutely zero improvement on last season. Really, the cars that finished behind him all had terrible pit stops. So, like, I think that says it all for itself. Yeah, I think Williams will be disappointed at this. They'll be hoping that the car bounces back in Japan and Australia, the next two races. Not in that order, Australia and Japan, but you know what I meant.
We do.
Yeah, if it doesn't start to bounce back, then they've got to be starting to think to themselves, have we made a mistake here by changing this philosophy? Because they need the points. Like, they can't really afford to go massively back again after having a huge step forward last year. So, yeah, Logan Sargent needs to pick up his game, otherwise he's going to be out of that seat at the end of the season. Simple as, especially with Kimi Antonelli and all that hanging around in the lower categories. So, yeah, they need to sort it out. He needs to sort it out. Everyone needs to sort it out, apart from Albon, who was great.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Williams will be really disappointed, and Logan will be. I think the thing is, Logan did look a little bit stronger in Bahrain. I was a little bit more, don't get me wrong, he wasn't setting the world alight, but he certainly sort of picked up his game from being sort of basically the back runner in a not back running car. So he kind of, I kind of saw glimpses of some of the potential that James and the team at Williams would have seen. But yeah, this weekend again, similar to Ricardo, it's just was not a good weekend. Kind of step, 2 forward and 3 steps back for him, unfortunately. And yeah, that Williams compared to last year, not getting those points, it's a difficult one to swallow for them, because it does feel like, I mean, no one's made a step backwards really, other than Alpine, but it's, other teams have obviously gained a heck of a lot more than them, so that will be disappointing for them. Albon, yeah, goes back to that argument you were saying earlier about Magnussen's penalties being fair or whatever. Yes, he did get a 10-second penalty for what he did to Albon, granted, but that is that enough to cause all of the delays and drama to everyone else?
10 seconds for putting someone in a wall and 10 seconds
Yes.
for cutting a corner and staying ahead of someone.
That was Yuki as well, yeah. So he finished on 20 seconds worth of penalties. So yeah, we'll get to Haas in a second, but Albon did really well to carry on like he did with that damage and still sort of finish 11th. But at the end of the day, 11th is still 0 points. So he'll it's difficult weekend. Obviously, no issues with Albon. I mean, it's now getting to the point where it's criminal that he's not in a bigger team, to be honest. Obviously, he saw the potential in Williams and what James was doing there, and everyone was hoping that Williams would come with a stronger car again and sort of propel themselves further up, into that kind of, the old sort of like Martini Williams days when they were almost like the 3rd or 4th quickest car. I think that's kind of what I think they were kind of hoping to push on from last season, with like really leave the Hasses and the Racing Bulls and those kind of teams behind really, and sort of push on towards the front 4 or 5. But it seems to be, unfortunately, that they've almost slipped back down behind a few of those other ones. So yeah, well, let's hope they've got some more updates to come. I haven't heard of anything that I know of that's definitely coming as yet, which is also a little bit worrying. Obviously, I know they're working hard. Everyone's going to be working hard, but that's the thing. There's everyone's going to be bringing updates. So yeah, we're all hoping for a McLaren size upgrade for them of last year. That would be lovely, but at the minute, I'm not holding my breath, unfortunately, for them.
Yeah, it's sad. I would probably argue that Williams are one of my favourite teams at the moment. So
Yeah.
hoping that they can sort it out and get back up into the points. And hoping for his sake, as much as the teams, that Logan Sargent can sort his game out and be up there with them.
Yeah.
Right, so we move on to Haas then.
Indeed.
Talk about the disaster that is Kevin Magnussen, or the hero that is Kevin Magnussen, depending on your perspective. Um,
If you're a Haas fan, hero, I
yeah,
think.
to be quite frankly honest, I'm annoyed about the fact that he got away with that penalty, but his driving was brilliant. He kept everyone behind him. He did what he needed
Yeah,
to do. And to be honest with you, if it wasn't for the Kevin Magnussen, it was a pretty damn boring race. But at the same time, you can't be allowed to cut a corner and stay ahead of someone. It's just ridiculous. Like, I don't understand it. I don't understand how we're still here with this rule. To be quite frankly honest with you, it should be a drive-through. Otherwise, it just encourages people to do it.
yeah. It's so what they have done is they have said they're going to try and be a bit more, well, a bit less lenient with penalties. So they felt like the 5 second penalty was a bit namby-pamby. So then when they were getting 10 second penalties, well, Magnussen was getting these 10 second penalties. It seemed a bit harsh compared to the 5 seconds that they were previously getting. However, you know, there's still the point of them moving to a harsher penalty was to make sure that people weren't just taking the 5 seconds as part of like a strategic call,
Yeah,
and
Perez
sort of
with
using.
Albon when he couldn't pass him, he just cut the corner and drove off and was
Yeah,
like
exactly.
30 seconds down the road by the end of it.
Exactly. That's exactly the thing. So, you know, it's that kind of thing they're trying to stop. But like I said, this race proved that that's still not enough. I think you're right. You hit the nail on the head earlier. It's a case of there needs to be. I think it's better rather than just giving a 5 or 10 second penalty. It should be a case of you have 2 laps to give the place back, however strategic you want to be, whatever. But you need to give that car an opportunity to go. Bear in mind it's quicker and it was about to overtake you.
Yeah.
And then if you don't, you've not only blocked them from overtaking you in the like originally, but then you've also refused the stewards' requests to let them back through. And then I don't think anyone can argue with a drive-through penalty, which removes them from the situation. I totally agree with you on that one. I think realistically, when you look at the bigger picture, that's the only way you're going to stop something like this happening. Which I know sounds really counterproductive because we were just saying a second ago, without this, it would have been a really boring race. But at the same time, you've got to think of how it's fair to run the race. And
Also, I say it was a really boring race. We don't know what the overall race would have been like. That's the thing. We were kind of robbed of that in a way because of the situation. So you
yeah,
never know. It might have ended up being another crash or something like that. Brings everyone back for a safety car. A whole different race, isn't it, at that point late in the race? But we just don't know. And yeah, I'd rather it be a fair race than an interesting race, if that makes sense. Like.
kind of. I do get where you're coming from, but like just for the facts of what happened, basically, Magnussen was able to hold the DRS train of all the cars we've just mentioned in our previous reports up so much that Hulkenberg, who's one of the few drivers who didn't pit under the safety car and was trying to use that track position advantage, he managed to pull far enough away that even with Magnussen getting these penalties, he was able to sort of hold the train up enough that Hulkenberg could then take his pit stop, come out in front of Magnussen and the train, and then obviously with fresh tyres disappear off into the distance again, therefore earning Haas a very, very crucial, when you think, you know, there's Williams and that lot that haven't got points, Alpine haven't got points yet, a very crucial first point.
Yeah,
So
sixth, isn't it, in the championship?
yeah,
So,
I mean,
and
yeah,
it's looking like everyone's going to be reliable this year. Effectively, it looks like, is Lance Stroll going to crash? If not, you're not getting points. That's basically what it seems to look like from this year.
yeah. Well, I mean, look at the way, like, Bahrain, only 5 teams, so 10 drivers from the 5 teams scored points. So, you know, if that's going to be a theme for at least, you know, the first half of the season, or until some of these upgrades really kick in for the lower teams, you know, that opportunity when there is a crash in one of the top 5 teams, or what some of them have a catastrophic issue or whatever, you know, these little points they're picking up now could be absolutely crucial. And don't get me wrong, Haas played a blinder with Magnussen, despite, like, you know, kind of sacrificing his race with, you know, get as many penalties as you like, as long as we can get Hulkenberg that 10th place, then great. So that's kind of what they managed to do. It was very clever, against the spirit of the sport, but at the same time, if you're going to leave loopholes in like that, then that's what's going to happen. They're going to get exploited. So, you know, that leaves Hulkenberg 76 seconds off the lead, nearly getting lapped, but didn't, and got that first point of the season for Haas. And Magnussen actually managed to keep 12th place, which, as you know, for those who don't score points your position, your highest position of the season, is then counted if everyone's between everyone that's on 0. He keeps his 12th position despite the penalties he had because Ocon behind him got lapped, therefore negating the gap between Magnussen and Ocon, because Ocon's then just read as 1 lap down. So that's the reason why Magnussen was able to keep there. Otherwise, he would have fallen all the way down to 16th, 17th, which you would have expected with those 20-second penalties. So that's the facts of the issue. Blinded by Haas.
Something that's a bit ridiculous in a way. Like he had a 20-second penalty. He should have been effectively just been 20 seconds down the road from where he is. So he would have been lapped and all this and the next thing. But anyway. I don't make the rules.
It's a strange clarification thing, isn't it? Yeah, I was actually surprised when I saw it because I kind of just assumed his name would drop down, but then it suddenly didn't. So yeah, I was baffled with that one as you are. It just doesn't really make logical sense, but that is unfortunately
the logic and the FIA go hand in hand.
Exactly. So that's the story of Haas, which is probably our biggest story of the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we just stop now then?
No, because we get to berate Stroll for crashing a good car.
Yeah, let's talk about Aston Martin and Lance Stroll and what is one of the funniest radio calls I've heard in my time.
It's brilliant.
I don't know what his engineer was doing. Like, how did he not know that his driver was in the wall? But that comment of "No, I'm in the wall."
I guess it's surely that thing. I guess it's surely that thing of like he might have just like seen the car stops and he was like, well, maybe he's just broken the nose cone off and gone straight in, like directly in front. But obviously hadn't seen the front left wheel that had hit the inside of the corner before, in the inside wall, and it was basically sort of like it should be like that, and it's doing that. So
I just like the idea of Lance Stroll just sat there in the car, all smashed up around him, just like. No, I can't bring this back.
Or if he does, there's no point in doing so. Absolutely jackal.
I'll drag it round the track.
Yeah.
Absolutely mental. But no, terrible performance from Stroll. He hit it in practice, wasn't it? Practice 3, I think he hit it, and then he's hit it again in the race. Just like learn from your mistake, don't do it. As I said, without him doing that, he'd probably been 10th and he'd have been a point. At the moment, that's where I feel the worst case scenario would have been for him, would have been 10th. So, yeah, he's thrown away a point, effectively.
I also think he's kind of robbed. We're sat here saying that it wasn't the most eventful race because of the and that Magnussen's thing was probably the most exciting thing. Yeah. I think part of the reason why we didn't have a quite as interesting race as Saudi Arabia's thrown up previously is partly because when Stroll did crash, fairly early on, he allowed all of the front runners, bar those that wanted to take the risk, that opportunity to pit onto hards and just go to the end, which kind of really neutralised any strategies of undercuts, overcuts, or anything.
Yeah.
So partially, part of what Stroll did actually robbed us of a potentially good race. That was disappointing.
A thing floated around by a few commentary teams and stuff of like they should do 3 tyre mandatory, so they have to run all 3 types of compound, and then having all 3 there. But yeah, I don't know if they'll ever go for that. But yeah, Stroll. Every now and again, he shows a glimpse of what he can do, and you're like. Yeah, he can do this. He just needs to get his head right. But it's just been too long now. He's been in the sport, 8 years at this point? Or something stupid like that? He's got to get his shit together. If he's not going to do it by now, then he's not going to, let's face it. So
It's strange, because he's always, whenever you see the driver market, his contract is indefinite, because his dad owns the team. So nobody really knows, and arguably you could argue he's actually under 0 pressure. You hear so many people say that, and like Perez is a great example, that when his position is really, really at its most under pressure, most strenuous, he seems to pull out these amazing performances, which is every so often, and maybe that's what Stroll's missing. Because he was,
to when Stroll was an okayish driver, he was at Williams, or he was at Racing Point before they were bought out.
And getting podiums and pole positions.
And that's when he had the pressure, because he actually had to perform to keep his seat. But now he's got a safe seat. He's got, let's say, complacency, hasn't he?
he can chuck it in, like, be a bit sort of silly with it, and if he crashes and doesn't play the hit, he can afford to either try and be the hero or risk crashing it, and with no consequences really. At the end of the day, other than his dad turning around on Drive to Survive saying, "I'm his dad before his boss, and I hope he's okay."
Yeah,
It's
sorry if you can hear my neighbour's washing machine. I do apologise. But yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, I just don't understand why he's even still in the sport at this point. Like, at this point, he must know that he's never going to be world champion. No matter what his dad does, he's never going to be world champion. So, just go do tennis already. Like, you said you wanted to, like, just go do it. Because yeah, it's he's taken up a seat that a talented driver could have. Um,
It's a Mercedes engine seat, so again, you could have an Alex Albon in there. You could have a Kim Antonelli going straight into there, and really, rather than going to Williams, which
or
unfortunately,
Drogovic, who
or
also
Drugovich.
should be in the sport really. Like, it's ridiculous that we have a situation where we have a safe seat in the sport. It's just bizarre. But
Yep.
again, we've said it many times before. I'm still hopeful that one day Stroll will actually get his shit together and show why he's in the sport. But last showing of that, I believe, is that Turkish Grand Prix pole. Um,
I
Although,
agree.
to be fair, the Bahrain Grand Prix of his broken hand that he's recovering from, that was actually quite impressive and probably his best performance in the last, I don't know how long, probably since that qualifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moving on to Fernando Alonso, who I think will be quite happy, actually. On the flip side, fifth place in the Aston, which doesn't look anywhere near as competitive as it was last year. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good showing for him. I think where did he qualify in the end?
Fourth.
Fourth. He qualified fourth. I mean, yeah, he's lost that position, but still fifth in that Aston. I think it's a great showing for them. Hopefully, a sign that that car is actually raceable and that we can see some things from them this year.
Yeah, for the man that doesn't seem to ever age, he's shown the young guns how to do it. And no matter how where that car actually is, he's managed to sort of do some wonderful things with it. Seemed really racy and competitive. Lost out to Piastri, but obviously, like I said, that was partly down to that. Some cars being able to. I think he got jumped in the pit lane. I think partly as well.
It was a bit of a mess, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was all a big mess in there. So yeah, nothing, not a bad word to say about Alonso really. I think yes, he did lose a position from his quali, but I mean with the car that he's got, I think fifth place is a really good showing, and he continues to defy the age, and he must have a bath of anti-aging cream every night just to kind of keep himself going.
I need to find out what his diet is. And just
Yeah, I know. I need to know. I absolutely need to know. So
the man's just bought himself a yacht as well, which now there's rumours circulating that he's going to retire because he's bought a yacht. I don't believe it. Not with him still finishing up there, unless Aston come out next year with an absolute dog of a car. I think, or he might go to Merc. Who knows?
Could do.
Speaking of Merc, let's move on to them.
Yes.
Lewis Hamilton at 9th, George Russell 6th. Not a good weekend really for Mercs again. Something is inherently wrong with the car that Lewis is finishing down at the back end of the top 10 and barely making it through to Q3. Whether or not he's switched off a little bit because he's going to Ferrari next year, I don't know. I don't really think that's Lewis's style to just switch off like that. I don't recall that being the case in the McLaren when he went to the Mercedes. So, yeah, something's wrong with that car. Seems to be suiting George Russell a bit better, which is good for George if he's going to end up being the lead driver there potentially. But yeah, 6th and 9th is not where Mercedes want to be. It's poor for them, really, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think the offset between the two you can kind of explain down to the fact that George pitted under the safety car. Lewis was one of those that took the gamble not to see if he could use that track position, and I guess he started on the medium, so I think he was trying to go through to the softs, but just couldn't really do enough to make up any positions once he came out. Him and Norris did the same sort of trick. I think both of them would have been slightly higher if they'd just kind of followed the norm, but then again, I suppose they would have finished fairly sort of average position anyway. They weren't going to set the grid alight. with the safe strategy, and they would have had to double stack as well. So God knows who might have jumped them in that pit lane as well, because he was relatively close to George as well. But like you say, George did a better job across the weekend. Was the lead driver of the two Mercs, so that's the advantage. He could take the safer strategy, bag the extra points, and Hamilton had to take the gamble, which unfortunately for him didn't work. Yeah, I think that kind of explains why he's ninth. Ninth, I think, is slightly kind of doesn't tell the full story when you just look at the fact he was ninth. But and fair play for trying to take that, because that could have, on another day with it could have
had it happened the other way around before, hasn't he? Where people have done
yeah, exactly, yeah, and if there could have been if there was a second safety car, and him and Norris were able to pit under safety car conditions, come out with fresh softs, and probably coming out sort of fourth, fifth, then they could have really took challenge to the podium. So you never know what's going to happen. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. They had to pit under full racing conditions, and that was unfortunately the gamble didn't pay off. But yeah, I'm not going to defend
Also
Lewis too much. I think George did a better job.
Yeah, also showing a bit that the Merc car struggles with following and overtaking, I think, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he followed Norris for basically the rest of that race and couldn't get past.
Norris looked quicker, to be honest. Like, they both did the same gamble. They both pitted on the same lap, and Norris came out, and that McLaren looked better. Simple as that.
So interesting times at Mercedes. Hopefully they can do something to bring it back. I still have this dream that we're going to have like 4 teams again battling for a championship like we did in 2010, 2012, and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, take Red Bull out of the situation, and it's really close between Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, and one of the Astons.
One of the Astons, yeah. And Nico Hulkenberg. No, right. Moving on from Mercedes, we'll go to McLaren then. Lando Norris, just ahead of Lewis. Both of them were fighting towards the end. I feel like if they hadn't been caught battling each other, they might have caught Ollie Behrman. But I think battling each other, they did slow each other up, which just helped Ollie out a little bit towards the end there. Oscar Piastri, 4th place. He's got to be happy with that, I think.
Great result.
I can't remember where you said he started. Where was his qualifying position for Oscar?
7th, I believe.
7th. So yeah, from 7th to 4th. Brilliant. First lap again, he's feisty. I love him on a first lap. Every time it's the first lap of race, I'm watching Oscar Piastri because something is going to happen. Exciting times for him. He's still new in his F1 journey. If McLaren can give Lando and him a car, I think we could have a good little championship on our hands. But they just can't seem to get that car to work at the beginning of a season, really. I mean, better than last year, but we want you to be fighting with Red Bull all the time, McLaren. So get your shit together.
Yeah, I definitely think they've got one of the best driver lineups now. I think and young as well. So they've got years and years to go, which are as Lewis and Alonso have proved, they're going to get more and more experienced and arguably better and better and better. So it's looking bright for McLaren if they can give them the car to fight with, like you said. Norris, like I said, got stuck with that. With the gamble option that Lewis took, so he had essentially inherently the same issue. Couldn't quite catch up to Ollie at the end, but great result for Piastri. Moved up, obviously took the safer option of the pitting under safety car and really benefited from that. Like I said, I think he helped him jump Alonso as well. So fair play, amazing job by Oscar, and I was a little bit disappointed with Oscar after Bahrain. So this one has renewed my faith in the boy. Showed that maybe Bahrain was just a little bit of a blip or just a bit of a safe. Wanted to start the season a bit too safe, and then, like you say, got the elbows back out for Saudi Arabia, and great performance. McLaren, I think they've got the same sort of issues as Aston and Mercedes as well, with that Mercedes engine, trying to sort out some cooling issues that they're still being plagued with. But obviously, as you can see, McLaren, I think, are doing a much better job at the moment than the Works Mercedes team on it. So bodes well for them, especially in their fight versus Mercedes, and hopefully they can push on and cause Ferrari and maybe towards the end of the season again cause Red Bull some issues.
Yeah, hopefully that'll be really nice to see. Also going into the Australian Grand Prix next weekend, so let's hope that Oscar can do something good in front of his home fans. We'd love to see if he can get on the podium or something. That'd be nice. Right, moving on to Ferrari. Ollie Behrman 7th and Charles Leclerc 3rd. I think Charles is going to have to be happy with third. I don't think anyone at the moment can really catch the Red Bulls. So I think third place is basically what Ferrari are expecting at the moment. Is it's basically Red Bull are getting 1 and 2. Who's getting the other podium slot? As long as they get it, I think they're doing what they need to do at the moment. Hopefully, they can bring an upgrade, like we were saying about McLaren, where they can start fighting with Red Bull again. Surely someone has to. We can't have a Max Verstappen complete whitewash season, surely. God, please. Yeah, Ollie Behrman, though, fantastic debut. Just outside the points in qualifying. To finish then 7th on your debut on a track like Saudi Arabia is just mental. Really exciting talent for the future. I very much expect to see him in Kevin Magnussen's seat next year. I'm
Yeah,
calling that specific seat.
Yeah.
We came out.
Okay. All right. Cool. I agree. Out of the two Hasses, I think Hulkenberg seems to be the better of the two. So for experience, they should keep him. And I agree. I think it'd be crazy not to see Ollie in that, at least in that seat. I hope also it's not one of those where the bad car makes the young driver look worse than they are kind of situation for next year. But you never know what's going to happen, and I'm sure Ollie will be able to show some of his skills. He clearly, arguably, better suited to the F1 car than he has been for his F2 car recently. But because he was
for the F2, let's not forget.
he was. So again, maybe also he's a bit of a Saudi Arabia specialist. But take anything like that aside, because he didn't. The reason why I say that is because he didn't have a great Bahrain. In his F2.
Same for his teammate Kimi Antonelli.
It was.
Down to the team setup. But anyway, we're not talking F2. We're talking
F1. but yeah, I literally don't have enough good things to say about Ollie. That was an incredible performance. The amount of Alonso, Hamilton, they've done, I think, a combined nearly 700 races between the two of them, and Ollie Behrman's there with 2 hours in the car. Well, he didn't get through to Q3, so an hour and a half in the car, literally. Yeah. And to do what he did, and then
he was. He had in the Haas,
exactly. Yeah, and last year's Haas, so not even relevant to this year's cars. And then you've got such a small amount of window of practicing and getting used to that, and then being so aggressive in the first lap as well. So many new drivers coming into that situation may have played it super safe and lost 4, 5, 6 places in the first couple of turns just to make sure they didn't crash out. But no, he stuck his nose in. He got stuck in. He made everybody know that he was there and really staked his claim and wasn't going to get pushed around, which cannot. Yes, there's going to be times when that's going to go against you. Of course it will, but. I think he stayed out of trouble, managed to sort of keep his nose clean, and looked so quick all race long. Didn't even though his neck would have really been suffering towards the end because he just would not have been used to the G-forces.
You saw the crumpled on his headrest as well.
Absolutely,
how much his head was being pushed onto it.
Exactly, but his lap times didn't drop. And he managed to keep a charging Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton, two of arguably the biggest names in the sport at the moment. Keep them on soft tyres, charging at him on old hard tyres. He kept them behind him. I mean, yes, all right, he had a 13-odd second window to play with, but that's an amazing feat for a driver who's had an hour and a half practice.
He actually picked up his lap time. So his lap time, he did. He was mentioning, I think, when I was watching the commentary, they were saying he was on the same lap time as Charles.
Yeah.
That late in the race. That is just mental.
Incredible. I mean, like I said, I haven't got enough good words to say about Ollie, so amazing. It puts us in that really awkward position now that I actually really want to see him in the car in Australia. Obviously, I'd love to see Carlos back because he had a great Bahrain.
I personally do not expect to see him in the car in Australia. Just looking at how an Alex Albon had his, he was only out for one race, and he had a really complicated, there was issues and stuff of his one, and he was backed by Singapore. So,
yes.
I don't expect that we will see Ollie Behrman again in Australia. I think Carlos was already back in the paddock for the race.
He was. Absolutely.
That already, then I think he's going to be fine for Australia. But I know Ferrari have been giving Behrman a run in their 2022 car, I think it was, around Maranello or something like that. So he is getting a run in an old spec car. to get him more practice. So if he did end up in Australia, then he's going to be even better than he was this weekend. But I fully expect Sainz to be back in that car.
Yeah, it's just a shame that you do have such a good run and then has to go back to the sidelines. It is a shame, but of course we want to see Carlos back because, again, like I said, Carlos did such a good job in Bahrain. It would be amazing to see if he can keep up that form and really push on and make up for the points that he's lost in Saudi. So yeah, interesting to see what happens this weekend with Ferrari. I think they are the best opportunity we've got for again this year for a non-Red Bull win. So yeah, and moving just quickly some points on Leclerc. Best of the rest. Can't really argue more than that at the moment. Perez is holding up his end of the bargain in that second Red Bull seat. Arguably, with the results he was getting last year, either the car's easier to drive for him and suits him slightly better than last year's car, or he's driving better because he's, converted 2 second places this year, where last year...
He won this race last year, Perez.
Also true.
These are the races that he did all right at, and then it dropped off, so we'll see.
True. So we will see what happens, but, at the end of the day, from Red Bull's point of view, they only want their second driver to come second behind Max, and he's doing exactly that. So... he's doing everything he needs to do at the moment as well. So it is really just a fight for third place. And yeah, he was only 5 seconds ahead of Leclerc. But yeah, we'll move on to Red Bull in just a second. But yeah, Leclerc, I think, like I said, anyone who comes to third place at this point in the season has got to sort of see themselves as a little win, really. Simple as that.
I just want to rain on your parade a little bit there. He said he was only 5 seconds ahead of Leclerc. He did have a 5-second penalty as well, so he was actually like 10 seconds up the track. But
yeah, fair.
But yeah, no, Charles Leclerc, I think doing everything he can do at Ferrari at the moment. They need to give him a better car. I want to see a repeat of the 2022 beginning half of the season where it was him versus Max. I would love to see that again. But we will see if Ferrari can sort their shit out. Basically, going on to Red Bull and another masterclass from Max Verstappen. I think the only way that we're going to see him stop winning is if he moves out of that team at the moment.
So, get sacked, yeah.
Yeah, let's see if this inner rumours from Red Bull and that turn into anything to make our seasons interesting again. But no, in all seriousness though, cracking qualifying lap, controlled the race, did not get fastest lap. I believe that went to Charles Leclerc. So he'll be a bit annoyed about that because he does like to collect those fastest laps. But yeah, and then Sergio Perez I think he qualified third, finished second, so there's not much more really other than to sort out some qualifying pace, but as long as he finishes second, I don't think Red Bull will care about that.
As long as he's not qualifying 9th and 10th like he was last year at times, so no, I think they'll be happy with that. Yeah, like you said, had that 5-second penalty. Can you remember what that was for?
I believe, wasn't it for jump start? No, it wasn't jump start. It was unsafe release, which he did himself. So
yes.
The team held him, had a red light on. He went, nah, fuck it, and went. And
okay, right.
So it was entirely on him. He admitted after the race that it was his fault. But you know what? Fair. If you're going to make a mistake like that, you make sure that you make up enough time to cover it, and he did. So fair play.
Fair play.
Everyone who knows me knows I'm not really a Perez fan, but he's doing what he needs to do to keep that seat at the moment. Let's see if he can continue it when it hits the races he's not so good at.
True, and to be fair, as well, I mean, when you got to give him some sort of kudos for progression, if nothing else, getting to grips better with the car. And I know he's still with that 5-second penalty. He's 13.5 seconds behind Max, but that's considerably better than it was in Bahrain. So you've got to. He's definitely, this track obviously suits him better than Bahrain. So, it's an improvement from last weekend. And if he can continue to that, in 3 or 4 races, when it comes to that kind of Baku kind of style race that comes in, he might actually be able to put some pressure on Max for one of these races, which would be really good to see. It would be nice to see Max having something to sweat about,
Any battle for the lead. I don't care if it's between Max and Perez or Sargent and Joe. I just want a battle for the lead. Exactly. I don't care who it is.
Yeah. So it's like I said, it's definitely a step up from last weekend, or Bahrain, and we hope it continues. And I hope it's just Max has just clicked straight into that car again, and hopefully Perez just taken a few more races to get to grips with how it drives. But I think it definitely suits his car, suits him better. by the looks of things, suits him better than last year's car, especially the fact he's managed to stay ahead for both the first 2 races ahead of everybody else in the field. So yeah, it's looking ominous for a Max domination again, but hopefully, for everything crossed, the optimist in me says he's just taken a few races and then he'll be up to speed and be able to challenge. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. That,
Fingers.
or someone comes with a massive upgrade this weekend. That would be lovely. As long as it's not Red Bull. We don't want Red Bull.
Yeah.
Stop. Just stop right now. Put
Yeah.
all your money into catering and and let people catch up, please. But yeah, no, I think that covers everything. There hasn't really been any news over the week other than that the complainant in the Red Bull case has said they're going to re-look at it again. So we will let you know when we actually have a final decision on that, because who knows how long this is going to rumble on for. Yeah, other than that, there's not really any news that I've heard. What about you, Bowser?
Yeah, I think just this constant cloud hanging over Red Bull at the moment. Like, without this, they would just be in such heavenly bliss, wouldn't they? With the cars performing so well, both drivers are finishing first and second every time at the minute. Without this, it would just be happy plain sailing. But it's classic Red Bull. They just can't. There's got to be some kind of drama going on. Whether it's
just for the Drive to Survive cameras, that's what it is.
No, well, yeah.
I'm not. Don't mean that seriously.
No.
There's been an allegation made. It needs to be taken seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what? Like, we haven't made too many observations on this, like from a personal point of view, because as somebody who is streaming onto like online and everything, it's not fair to spread sort of untrue rumors. We can only go off what we've heard, and we can only really judge the team and those involved with the facts that come out. At the end of the day, we're not going to speculate on sort of hearsay. It's not fair on those involved, and obviously, if the allegation that has been made obviously should be absolutely taken seriously. We send our between the two of us, we hope it gets resolved quickly but fairly, and we hope everything is taken into consideration, and the truth is found at the end of the day. It comes to that. It's the most important thing, and we hope everybody involved is okay and getting the support they need as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't say that better myself. But right, I think that brings us to the end of the stream for today. So we will next be streaming live on Thursday night, 7:30 on Twitch. Both of us will be there. So I am Umilius on Twitch, and he is Bowser_49. Come join us, have a watch, laugh at us. We're terrible. It should be good fun. We're doing our own car career at the moment, and we will go back to doing a proper F1 car series at some point in the distant future. We're just rounding off this series. We're just mixing it up a little bit, and yeah, it's a bit of fun. So come join us, have a laugh, chat shit with us. What we love to do is talk F1 and race. So yeah, join us if you like that. But yeah, any final words from you, Bowser?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't raced in 2 weeks after sort of not racing this week, so it might be some calamities worth tuning in for. But yeah, anybody else that's tuned in, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your support. Please do interact with us throughout the week. If you've got any questions, or potentially if there's anything else you want us to explain, or go into more detail on these sort of podcasts, then please do let us know. Your feedback is greatly appreciated, and yeah, we love chatting F1 at the end of the day. So if there's something you want to know or want us to look into and explain for you and find out those information, then please do get in touch, get involved, and make this podcast what you want it to be as much as us.
Yeah, absolutely, and please do hit that subscribe button to follow for more
Absolutely.
videos. But yes, that's all for today. So thank you very much, everybody, and we will catch you soon.
We shall. Bye.